I would be part of a German conversation, but then I would just reply in English. It would be awkward either way. Like either if then they switch the language to English because you said that, or if they just sort of respond to you but continue in German, then you feel maybe a bit ignored because maybe you were trying to switch the language to English by saying that.
It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. I'm your host, Sean Behrens, and if you're new to the podcast, don't forget to subscribe in whichever app you listen to your podcasts in, and visit thegermanexperience.de to find out more about me, to contact me, and also access previous episodes and more. That's thegermanexperience.de. I also have a Facebook group, and by the way, it just hit 500 members last week. It's still growing, but I already love what this community is becoming, and I'd love to have you there as well. So go to the show notes and click the link to join the Facebook group. Now, the past few weeks, I've been mentioning a course for learning German called German Uncovered, which is a story-based approach to learning German. I like the concept so much that I became an affiliate partner of Fluent Language, who make the course. And after this week's guest interview, I speak with Kerstin, one of the founders of Fluent Language, about the course and about what story-based learning is. That's coming up after this week's interview, so stick around if you're curious. This week, I've also made a few guest appearances on some podcasts, and one of them was on Americans in Germany drinking whiskey. Now, I don't know if you remember, but in July, citystarlings.com put together a list of top 10 podcasts that you should listen to if you're an expat in Germany. The German Experience was featured, and these guys, Americans in Germany Drinking Whiskey, were also on that list. And they invited me to come on their show, and I had such a fun time talking to Alex and Jeff. The episode is called Making Friends with Germans, and in the episode, I tell some stories about my adventures making friends in Germany, and I also give some advice about it. It also includes a surprise cameo from my 5-year-old daughter and a very funny reaction to a squeaky chair. Link is in the show notes. Go and check it out. And there are also 2 more bonus episodes that feature me as a guest. Now, if you remember, is a German podcast, and they have bonus episodes where you have to guess the historical figure based on some clues that you get. And there's 2 more of those episodes with me in and me stumbling through bad German. And one of the episodes, they actually had someone speaking Swiss German on the episode. And if you've never heard Swiss German and think you'd stand a chance with it, go and listen. Woo! I stood 0 chance. Last week's episode was with Nina, and we discussed the Langenscheidt Jugendwort, the youth words of 2020. And the Langenscheidt have now narrowed their choices down to the top 3 finalists. Okay, so are you ready? I'm going to tell you what the top 3 finalists is, just as a follow-up to last week's episode. The top 3 youth words of 2020. One of these is going to be the youth word of 2020. The words are wild, lost, and cringe. That's right. These are the German youth words of 2020. They have literally narrowed down the 10 finalist words to the 3 English words. So the winner this year is going to be an English word. It's a pity because there were some other pretty cool words on that list. But anyway, so there you go. Let's find out in a few weeks what the Jugendwort of 2020 will be. I've also got some feedback about that episode, by the way, as well as feedback about the climate change episode 2 weeks ago. And that's all coming up after this week's guest interview. Speaking of the guest interview this week, it's Sarah from Toronto, Canada, who is currently living in Munich. Now, she started off studying biology in Canada, but later moved to a more business-related degree, which she finished by doing her master's in Munich. She's been in Germany for 4 years now and has her own podcast called Falling Hard, which is about international life with a focus on relationships. She also runs a blog about environmentalism called Circular But Not Infinite. In our interview, we discuss why she fell in love with Munich and decided to stay in Germany, about her learning German, and her observations about environmentalism here in Germany. Here's Sarah from Canada. So you ended up in Germany then, you said, to do your master's, but maybe just give me kind of your history of why Germany and how you ended up here.
So part of my family is German. On my mom's side, both of her parents were German and emigrated to Canada. So I always knew a little bit about the German culture, and I had visited Germany a couple times during my childhood, and always kind of had the idea that I wanted to live in Europe at some point as kind of an adventure and didn't really know which country. And then while I was on a backpacking trip, I happened to find out about the opportunity to do a master's in Germany, almost for free, basically. There's some low couple €100 a semester student fees.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of Germany, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I found out about that opportunity, and then kind of applied and happened to get in, and then just kind of decided to move here on a whim. I didn't really know what was in store, but was just really excited about the opportunity to try out living in another country. And it had always been one of my goals as well to learn another language.
Okay, I was going to say, because usually that's what puts people off, is when they have to learn a complete new language, and especially German, which is considered kind of hard.
Yeah. I was always pretty into languages. I took one German course in high school on Saturdays, actually. My school didn't offer it, so I had to go on the weekends on Saturday mornings, and I still wanted to do it, although only for 1 year. After that, I was not so into the Saturday morning courses when I was later on in high school.
No, I think high school Saturday courses is kind of a no-go.
Yeah. But yeah, I was kind of interested by the language, even though it was a challenge. I thought it would be cool to be able to speak a second language.
But I think you said before you ended up in Germany, you did some time backpacking, right?
Yeah. I was actually traveling for about 6 months, first to New Zealand and Australia, and then all around Southeast Asia. So I didn't have too much of a settled, rooted life in Toronto, which I think helped me with my decision to move abroad, because I didn't feel like I was quitting a job or giving up this whole life that I'd been doing for years. I had kind of just come back from backpacking. I was just home for the summer, and I wasn't really sure what to do next. It was kind of get another full-time job in the city, or maybe take this chance to do a master's degree.
And then, yeah, and I guess that's a good time to do it when you're not tied down like that.
Yeah, for me, I think like going abroad in my early 20s was a good decision. It's always, I think, a good time to go because you don't have as many commitments.
Yeah. So was your idea when you moved to Germany just the studying and see, or did you have in mind that you would like to make it longer term?
No, I really thought at the beginning that I would only come for 2 years and then go back. And I even thought 2 years was such a really long time. I was a little bit hesitant, and I kind of wish the master's program would only be 1 year. But then, of course, plans change, and I really fell in love with the city of Munich and made a great group of friends here and kind of got my life all settled. And then it ended, and I was like, oh, I'm not ready to go back yet.
Yeah. So what were your experiences of Munich?
Well, I mean, my impression of Munich in general is that it's a great city. A lot of the things I love about it are the close proximity to the Alps. You can be in about an hour hiking or skiing or enjoying beautiful lakes and mountains. I love how compact it is, actually. Like, it's both really well connected with public transportation, lines that go everywhere and come really frequently. And it's also great for biking, at least in my opinion. Some people still complain that the bike paths aren't good enough, but compared to a city like Toronto, or New York or London or something, I think it's really, really good for biking.
Try South Africa, people. There are no bicycle paths. This is amazing what you have here.
Yeah, and some German people still complain. They say it's not as good as Scandinavia or Netherlands or something.
Yes, Germans, we know it's not as good as somewhere else. There's always somewhere else that's better, but on the ranking, it's pretty high up.
Yeah, in Toronto, it's really spread out as a city, and it's a bit dangerous to bike and would take a long time, so it's not that good. So I really like that I can ride my bike everywhere. I don't have to own a car. What else do I like about it? It's just really beautiful. There's really nice architecture. There's a lot of green spaces. You have the huge English garden in the middle of the city, which is bigger than Central Park. And the water is really clean. You can go swimming in the Isar or in the creek in the middle of the English Garden Park, which is called the Eisbach. People surf on that, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. You said that you met some friends, or that you got friends in those first 2 years when you were doing your masters. Were they Germans or international people? What kind of connections were you making during that time?
A pretty good mix of both German and international, actually. So most of the people I did meet through my master's program. So that was really good because everyone had kind of just moved to the city at the same time, and everyone was sort of looking to make new friends and meet people within the program. Other than that, I had a few random acquaintances. I have some second cousins who are German, who I meet up with now and then. trying to think how else I met friends, primarily through the master's program. And then I guess also through people I lived with. So I lived in some WGs, as maybe your listeners have heard of, the Wohngemeinschaft, or the shared flats. So I lived with some other university students or young working people and made friends with some of them, and then some of their friends as well.
Yeah. Is that a big thing in Canada as well? The similar to these Wohngemeinschafts, where a whole bunch of students are living together in like a normal block of apartment, or a normal apartment block?
Not really, not as much. I have to say it's another thing that I really like about Germany, that when you're searching for flats online, they actually have this distinction between, they call it Zweck and kein Zweck, which is like purpose and not just for purpose. So it means you want to live together not just to share the cost of rent, but you actually want to live together to have a glass of wine or watch a TV show or do some sports together. And people will actively say that they're looking for having this nice, cozy kind of friends flat share. And I feel like if you did that in Toronto, people would think you were really weird and you had no friends, that you were searching for new friends through your roommate. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be. It would in South Africa. It would be a bit strange as well. In South Africa, they've got kind of residences for students. So it's like maybe a whole campus where students stay together near to the university. And I think then some students do rent apartments. Or in South Africa, it's more houses. They rent houses. So it's very strange to me to do that. And I like it when it's all a Wohngemeinschaft, like the whole apartment block. But when we were a young family, we just moved to Germany, and we'd had our son, and he was a newborn at that time. We had 2 Wohngemeinschafts in our apartment block, and then we had our apartment, and then there were 2 elderly ladies living just above and below the Wohngemeinschafts. That is a terrible mix. You cannot have these WGs in the same building as 2 elderly citizens and new families. It was a recipe for disaster. So.
Oh, I feel bad for you guys then. A lot of parties, I guess.
Yeah, there were a lot of parties. They used to find a way to get up into the ceiling as well of the apartment complex, and we were on the top floor back then, and so we would often hear them stomping around in the attic. So I was like, I suddenly realized, my God, I am that curmudgeonly, grumpy old man, because I would go up to the ceiling and say, "You kids, it's 2:00 in the morning. I've got kids and I got to work tomorrow. Could you go back to your apartment?" But yeah, it is cool.
Don't worry. I already feel like that sometimes. We also have another WG above us, and the floors and ceilings are so thin. I swear I can hear everything stomping around all the time, and they're doing like a home workout and my whole room is shaking. I'm like, no, guys, stop.
So what's made you decide to stay? You said you fell in love with Munich, but now you've been here you're here for 4 years. What is the reason? What made you fall in love with Munich?
Yeah, I think it's a couple different things. In terms of what I fell in love with the city in general, I think I really love the mountains. That's something that where I'm from that I don't have where I'm from. It's a very flat area, although it does have a lot of really nice lakes and forests, but not the mountains like here. So I love that it's so easy to get out to really beautiful nature and just do hikes, or I'm really into skiing and snowboarding as well. In terms of why I chose not to go back so far, I think another component was sort of Germany. In terms of master's programs, you don't have a set graduation date when everyone graduates at the same time like you do in North America or a lot of other places, I think. So it's kind of like this rolling graduation of you can start your thesis whenever you want, and then you just finish it 6 months after that. And there's a different graduation ceremony every semester, and people just go to whichever one suits them. So I finished a little bit earlier than most of my friends. I was one of a handful of people that did it within 2 years, and most people take their time. They do an exchange semester or whatever, and they take 2.5 years. So for me, with my whole group of friends, when I finished, it didn't really feel like the end yet, because everyone else was still studying or doing their thesis for another 6 months. So I just didn't really feel ready to leave with my whole kind of social group and everything. And yeah, I still really like being in Europe. I love being able to travel easily on weekend trips to different places and just keep exploring. So yeah, I just decided to take a job at the company where I was already working part-time during my master's thesis. And yeah, then once you take a job, you're there for another 1 to 2 years, depending on how it goes. It ended up that I decided to leave the company and change to another one after 1.5 years. Yeah. And at that point, when I was changing jobs, I did think a lot about if I wanted to go back to Canada, maybe. But now I am in a relationship with a half German, half American guy. And we're both pretty happy in Munich right now. And I think at some point we might move back to North America. But I think my relationship was also somewhat of a factor at that point when I was like, okay, I don't want to just move back to Canada now and do long distance.
So what about learning German? How you already had some kind of background because you did some learning of German way back when in Toronto. I've learned to say Toronto from Canadians that live there. I met some people from Toronto a while ago, and I was always saying Toronto, and then it's like, it's not Toronto, it's Toronto.
Yeah, well, we have to say it a lot, so we get a bit lazy. Yeah. No, actually, I can come back to your previous question as well, or I'll try to answer both.
Sorry.
So another one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed living in Germany and why I think I'm still here is, of course, I do really like the German culture and the German people. I think there's a lot of things that I identify with. For example, how they're just very direct and honest. German people tend not to like small talk that much.
Yeah.
And that was something I feel like I was always an anomaly living in North America, where it would really annoy me when people would ask, how are you? And not really like mean it or care how you actually are. They just say it as the general greeting. So I really like that in Germany, no one's going to ask you how you are and not actually want to hear a real answer. Yeah, I don't know. I think Germany has a lot of cool history and traditions and cultural things. Drinking beer is a big part of the culture, which I'm a fan of.
Yeah, you can't get behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the language, I came here basically very beginner, like almost not knowing any German. And then that was definitely a struggle, learning German basically from the beginning and feeling left out of a lot of social situations since half my friend group was German. So that was definitely a struggle. But I took courses at the university. So luckily that was also kind of free included within the university offering that you can take language courses. And yeah, just worked my way through the levels. I started at a 1.2 or 2.1, and then I moved up to B1 and almost, I don't think I officially took B2, but I think I'm at least at that level now.
I think that's as far as I went as well, B1 or B2. You were saying that at some points it was a struggle. What do you mean it was a struggle? Did you have a feeling of isolation at any point in those early days, or did you have enough friends to prevent that kind of feeling?
Like isolation because of the language, or just isolation in general?
So you said that. So you said, for example, you had the idea, or you had the feeling in some social situations, which I totally relate with as well, where you were lost suddenly and you kind of like a spare wheel, or Yeah,
I think everyone really meant well or means well to include you and try to speak English, but naturally, when there's a side conversation between two people, or people just kind of forget, or it's easier to say something, or they're more familiar with, they always talk to this person in that language. So it can be a struggle for people to remember to keep switching back to English, even if they speak English very well. So I think that was a struggle sometimes at the beginning, when it was often a majority German group, and I was the one of two people who didn't understand German. And then you had to be a bit annoying. Like, one of my good friends would often do it for me. She'd be like, guys, English, please, English, please. Like, Sarah's here, let's speak English. But then you feel really lame because someone is reminding 10 people to all change to English for you.
It's such an awkward situation when you know that you're the reason that everyone around the table is speaking English.
Yeah.
It happened to me a lot at work in the beginning as well. And you're just like, oh no, just speak German, guys. It's fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. You don't want to impose on people. Or there were even a lot of awkward situations once my German got to a level where it was good enough that I could understand almost everything, but I had troubles replying properly in German. So I would be part of a German conversation, but then I would just reply in English as a group conversation. And then it would be awkward either way. Like, either if then they switch the language to English because you said that, or if they just sort of can like respond to you but continue in German, then you feel maybe a bit ignored because maybe you were trying to switch the language to English by saying that.
Yeah, it's so there's so many awkward situations that can come out of that, and I think that's what's difficult for a lot of people to get through in the initial phases, is that you have to kind of push through. So what kept you going? Was it just a general motivation that you had to learn it and learn it properly? Because maybe there was a thought in your head, I'm going to be out of here in 2 years anyway.
Yeah, sometimes I had those thoughts. I was like, oh, am I investing hundreds of hours just almost for nothing, that I'm going to go back to Canada after this and it's all going to have been a waste and then I'm going to forget it anyways because I don't use it. But I think I was motivated to feel like as included as possible in these social situations. Like I didn't want to be left out, and I can also have a tendency that I need to be in control and know everything that's going on at all times. Like I need to eavesdrop on all of the conversations. I can't just like not know what people are talking about. So I think that was a big
That's
motivation.
a good driving force. That's a good motivating factor. Yeah, that eavesdropping thing is one of the most interesting things that I noticed about when I moved over here, because I came over with zero German knowledge as well. And when you go out in a shopping mall or you're out on the street and you hear people talking, you don't understand any of that. And I remember when I went back to South Africa and I was walking through a shopping mall, I could hear dozens of conversations and I could immediately understand what they were talking about. It was amazing. I'm like, this is incredible. It's like a superpower that I can understand what people are talking about.
Yeah, that's something that you quite notice.
What's your German level like now? You said it's pretty fluent, but do you still find yourself in situations where you kind of feel, crap, I'm not in this conversation, or that you're on an island at a table with everyone speaking about something you don't understand around you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good, but there's definitely sometimes when I have an advanced thought that I'd like to articulate, or a particular argument or something, and then I feel like I can't really do it in German, so I'll just say it in English, and usually the people that I hang out with also speak English, so then I don't know, it'll kind of just go back to that. But I feel like for everyday situations, like I've managed to navigate going to different government offices, or what did I have? I don't know. I had a legal situation that I kind of had to navigate, or different everyday things, and that's pretty fine. Occasionally there's still some kind of misunderstanding, but usually you can just ask some more questions and clear it up and figure it out. But yeah, no, it's pretty good. I mean, I still speak English with most of my friends, but I have a new roommate and we try to only speak German with each other, which is good practice.
Yeah. And what about German itself? It sounds like you've got some kind of love for, is it a love for German, or just a love for learning languages in general?
I think I have a love-hate relationship with German. I love it sometimes. Like there's some words that are super funny, but I also have had times when I've just cried because I just didn't get the grammar and it was so complicated, or I said, how am I really supposed to decline adjectives on the go? This is ridiculous. And I have to memorize all these articles. This is never going to happen. But yeah, I think in general, I don't know. I really liked learning French in high school as well, although I didn't stick with that one. But I think I like languages, and I'm really into words and reading. So words get stuck in my head that I learn randomly.
Mm-hmm. And do you have like favorite German words?
Yes, I do have a favorite German word. My favorite German word is Doch, which I suppose you're familiar with. But for any listeners who don't speak German, we can try to explain Doch.
You can try and explain it. Good luck.
So Doch, one of the reasons that Doch is my favorite German word is because it doesn't exist in English. So it's quite difficult to directly translate. But basically, you can say Doch if someone says, for example, honey, there's no milk left in the fridge. Then you say, Doch, and it means like, yes, there is. So it counters whatever someone said. So you can kind of win an argument, or you can also use it to make a statement stronger. Like, that's just the way it is. You could say that's the way it is, but you could say that's just the way it is. So in German, the Doch would be like a just.
Yeah, it is a very versatile word, and it's a good point that you bring up. It's actually, but it's also one of the more difficult words to learn in the beginning. In fact, I wouldn't say one of the more. It's many of those kind of little amplifier words are difficult to get to understand and how people are using them. But it was also very strange for me when I would say something and someone would say Doch. I'm like, what do you mean now? Are you contradicting me? Are you agreeing with me? In the beginning, it was always very confusing, but it's fantastic when you can just go Doch and you mean, well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, win the argument with one word.
My articles, by the way, are still a mess. How are your articles? Do you think you've gotten them down?
No, not really in terms of the articles. I mean, I think my German took quite a lull for a while. I kind of stopped working on it. I just decided, that's kind of good enough. I can get by in all of my everyday situations. And to get to the next level would require such an increased effort to make kind of a small return of difference. But then recently I got a second wind. I downloaded a bunch of apps that test you on the articles of different words. So you kind of play a game and you say der, die, das. So it's getting better. I'm refreshing myself on some of them. But in general, no, I would not say I have a good handle on the articles. I would say I just kind of close my eyes and randomly pick one that seems reasonable and hope that no one minds.
Yeah. What apps are you using, by the way?
I'd have to check my phone. I downloaded a couple of them. They have different levels of. One is just called Der die Das, evidently.
Okay.
Actually, two of them are called Der die Das. So if you just search that in the App Store,
you're gonna find something.
Yeah, there's another one here called Grammatisch, but I don't think I've used that one yet.
Okay.
So I would recommend Der die Das, either of the versions.
Yeah. Because I'm also at the point now where I'm looking for ways to take my German to the next level, because I've become very lazy. And I think it happens a lot. When you get a certain level of proficiency, you're just like, this is good enough to get along. I can hang out with my friends. I can have meetings at work and discuss in German. But now I'm really hungry to take it to the next level. But the problem is you get so many bad habits in your German as well that'll take ages to get out.
What are your bad habits?
So it's almost better to do this. Oh God! Well, first of all, the articles, especially the dative. When it's dative, I just say dem for everything. Doesn't matter. Occasionally, I'll realize, okay, wait, no, that's der because it's usually d. But yeah, and it's bad habits like that, and also sentence structure. I still sometimes structure my sentences in the English way and not put the verb at the end of the sentence.
Yeah, I make that mistake sometimes too.
Yeah. So there's lots of bad habits that have crept in and will be very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah, it is difficult because at the beginning you make so much progress so fast with a small amount of effort, but then once you're at a more advanced point, to get to that native level is quite a lot of effort.
Yeah, a law of diminishing returns,
yeah,
I guess,
exactly.
is what's applicable here. Yeah, and it's just, but I think what I'm realizing the key is reading German books and reading difficult German books is not just pulp novels or whatever. So,
and do you take time to look up the new words that you find in them or write them down?
Oh God, no, Sarah.
Because I tried doing that, but then it just was such an exhausting exercise because I'm a know-it-all, I guess, because I wanted to know what every single word meant so that I had to write them all down and then Google them all afterwards. And it took so much time that I just stopped doing it.
Yeah, I've got the other problem. I see a new word and I'm like, you know what? If it comes up again in the text, I'll look it up then. But it's really not a good approach. It's the opposite to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll watch a show on Netflix in German. I like doing that, actually. I don't mind watching shows in German.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I'm watching it alone, and on my computer, then I'll pause it and I'll Google words a lot. So then it also takes me quite a long time to get through the show because I'm always like pausing, Googling.
Do you watch with the subtitles on?
Yeah, usually. But it's annoying because they often don't match what they're actually saying.
I know. It bothers me as well. What German Netflix shows can you recommend for people?
I can actually really recommend Dark.
Yeah.
It's about time traveling and different generations. And I don't know. It's sort of like a mystery, thriller, adventure kind of thing.
Yeah. What other tips do you have for people?
I watched this show that was actually an Austrian show called, what was it called? Vorstädterweiber, which is kind of like the Austrian version of Desperate Housewives.
Okay.
So that was quite funny, actually. But it was also hard because they had some like Bavarian or Austrian slang thrown in there a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I struggle with the Austrian accent is really tough.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. I tried to watch English shows with the German dubbed voices sometimes, but that's always harder to understand too because you don't have the lips to see what they're really saying.
Yeah, and I struggle with that because I can't immerse myself if I can see that the voice is not matching the lips. I can't watch synchronized or dubbed TV shows.
Do you have any recommendations of other good German shows?
I not really. I'm just trying to think of what German shows I've watched. in German on Netflix. I watched some of Stromberg. I don't know if you know Stromberg. It's
No?
it's based on the American version of The Office.
Okay.
It's kind of the German version, but it's very different. It's funny in places, but it's also not so. At least I didn't. Maybe I wasn't getting the jokes. That's also highly possible with me.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
So I wouldn't. So I don't know if I can recommend that per se. Yeah. Otherwise, no. I used to watch a lot of the reality TV shows in German because that was also very easy to understand. All those a lot of colloquialisms and so on. But it's also a good way. So you, when I was looking you up when you got in touch, I saw that you have a blog about environmentalism. I think. What is that? I actually haven't written it down. What is your blog called?
Yeah, I do. So it's called Circular Not Infinite, and it's about environmentalism and also economic issues. So it started out because I got really interested in the circular economy, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
very, very, very high level.
Yeah.
Familiar with it, like
not so the general idea is that you should kind of design waste out of the system. So it's kind of the best top level of sustainability and zero waste. So the idea would be that companies would take full responsibility for their product throughout the whole life cycle. So they would have to design things in containers that you return to be refilled or something, or collect the waste at the end, basically. So yeah, I just thought that was a really cool idea and got pretty interested in different topics about environmentalism and sustainability. And yeah, just wanted to try writing about it and sharing those ideas with other people. Yeah. So yeah, we can talk as well a little bit about experiences of environmentalism and sustainability in Germany, if you like.
Yeah. So yeah, because you started that blog, I assume, before you moved here, or was that after you moved here?
No, it was actually after I moved here. It was actually 2 years ago.
Yeah. So what are your observations of Germany and because what I found moving from South Africa is, well, let's put it this way. Back then when I left, there wasn't much things in terms of environmentalism going on and not much thought in that direction. But Germany really surprised me. As just the basics of separating garbage was quite a mind-blowing thing for me when I got here.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think Germany is definitely very into waste separation and recycling, or seems to be pretty advanced at that compared to some other countries. So I definitely noticed that there's the system of the deposit or the Pfand on the plastic bottles was new to me. So that you bring all of your plastic bottles back to the supermarket for 15 to 20, 25 cents worth of deposit, which is pretty significant for for a bottle of juice that maybe costs less than €1. So yeah, I think in general, I think Germany and Germans are pretty attuned to environmental issues. Usually the average person will care about environmental issues and do the recycling and do all the things. I think Germany on the national level is trying to be a leader in terms of climate change and moving towards more green and sustainable renewable sources of energy. They're phasing out coal and nuclear, although phasing out nuclear is kind of a controversial topic because a lot of people think that it is a very efficient way to produce energy and that the relatively small amount of waste it produces is kind of a decent trade-off.
It was kind of a knee-jerk thing after that, the whole Japanese tsunami and earthquake and what was it, Fukushima, that were, and I think straight after that they really kicked it into gear of getting rid of the nuclear power, and that has been a huge debate in Germany since then.
Oh, did they start that long ago? I wasn't aware when they started.
I think they started moving with the policies, and they even started shutting some plants down back then, and it was almost like a knee-jerk reaction to that.
Okay.
Although I think it was something they discussed for a long time already. So essentially, I think the biggest concern with that is just the threat, I guess, of natural disaster or what could happen as well.
Yeah, the potential for emergency situations or leakages. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, if people are interested in those kind of topics, I actually just published a new article on the blog this week, kind of comparing Germany to Canada or to other countries when it comes to environmentalism. And I think maybe one interesting point is although at the national level, Germany is trying to be a leader in climate change and moving towards these greener policies, and the average German does recycle everything and bring their reusable tote to the grocery store and whatever. There's this whole other side where Germany has a really big automotive industry, where it's a huge producer of cars. Cars, of course, are not the most environmentally friendly thing.
No,
and there's the lobby in the auto industry, and there was the whole VW gas diesel emissions scandal. So I think there's kind of a darker side of Germany. On the one hand, tries to be really green, but they also have the huge automotive industry, which is not the most green.
Yeah, so definitely go and check out the blog. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, so people can go and have a look at that if they're interested in these kind of environmentalism issues.
Thanks, yeah.
Now, you've also got a podcast, as we said at the beginning.
I have a lot of personal initiatives.
You're busy. So your podcast is Falling Hard. Just give me the summary of what it's about.
So Falling Hard is a podcast about international life, love, dating, and relationships. And I interview other expats or people living abroad or dating people from another culture, and kind of swap funny stories and anecdotes and just kind of talk about what that's like. And
your first episode was your own story, I think, if I remember correctly.
My first episode, I interviewed my boyfriend, actually. So
That's right.
He compared the dating scene in Miami versus Munich for us.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
go and look for Falling Hard. Also links to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Where else can people find you?
They can find the blog. You'll link the link. They can find the podcast at Falling Hard Podcast on Instagram. And my personal Instagram is at sar.cotter, Cotter, if you want to be friends or send me a DM or
Cool. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the podcast. And let's stay in touch.
It was great fun. Thanks so much, Sean.
Thank you to Sarah, and as always, links are in the show notes to her Instagram and her blog site. Now, I've got some feedback about some recent episodes coming up, and then after this, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I will be speaking to Kerstin, who created the German Uncovered German course, about what story-based learning is, and just a little bit more about how the course works, the German Uncovered course. That's coming up, but first, some listener feedback. Let's start with some feedback that I got to last week's episode, the Youth Word of 2020. It was from a listener who posted his feedback as a 5-star review. Welcome to do that, people. Welcome to give me feedback with a 5-star review. This is a German person, and they wrote, Jugendwort des Jahres, 5 stars. And then he makes a few comments, and let's just clear this up about last episode. We spoke about the Wednesday meme. It's Wednesday, my dudes, which in German is Es ist Mittwoch, meine Kerle, with like a frog doing it. And he was just correcting me that it wasn't from the Reddit, the German Reddit, which was r/de. It's actually from r/ich_IEL, which is the German equivalent of RI_IRL, if that makes any sense. He says the word digger is used by everyone and not just teens, which is pretty much what Nina and I were saying. And by the way, this person doesn't believe that the youth words comes only from Netflix. It doesn't give any more information about that. But also a good source for memes is youlooked.exe. And if you want to see an American reacting to memes, there is a YouTuber called James Bray. So I'll put links to James Bray and to the youlooked.exe, which sounds really dodgy, doesn't it? Youlooked.exe. It sounds like the kind of thing you're not supposed to click on the internet. But it's an Instagram profile and a YouTube channel, so it's quite safe. Links are in the show notes. Then about the climate change episode, on my Instagram profile, the.germany.experience, I posted a question asking if people do anything to try and reduce their carbon footprint, and if they did, what is it that they do? And this is some of the feedback that I got. So I got from Christina Shu_86. Try to only eat meat on the weekends. Don't use car for short distances. And I think those are both very doable things. We spoke with Patrick in that episode about climate change, that you should start with the things that have a lot of impact, but very, very little effort on your part. And I think both those things, eating meat only on weekends and only using the car for short distances, those are a good start. Wenzel.house said, we have a cargo e-bike. We buy used as much as possible and we try to limit packaging. At Shishail Mindler, he says he buys secondhand everything from tech stuff to underwear. Kidding, you get the picture. Then Alexandra, who was a guest in the episode A Diplomat Spouse, she wrote, I haven't eaten any meat for the last 10 years, and I try to use as little plastic as possible. At Larissa Geller wrote, vegetarianism, buy things without plastic packages, use public transportation. And then Sounding Lustig, removing plastic products from my life step by step, e.g. straws, shopping bags, etc. Sherolta.Hershey writes, no car, traveling by train where possible, and limiting plastic in the bathroom. For example, shower soap. And that's a good point. Like, instead of buying these shower gels in the plastic packaging, just get soap. Summer Outside had one that really got me thinking. She reduces her carbon footprint by recycling, no car, no kids. She tries to buy higher quality items to avoid constant replacement. And that no kids made me think, wow, that's a good point. That is one way to reduce your carbon footprint, is not to have offspring. I have failed in that department. Then at Fiona Weaver, who is an upcoming guest on this podcast in the next few weeks, her episode is coming out. She wrote, we cycle as often as we can, recycle whatever we can. And then Dewdrop Planet wrote, use one vehicle and public transport to work, planting trees that are good at absorbing CO2. So I thought these were all very interesting responses, and they give you a lot of ideas of some simple things that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. I realized I need to do a lot more. I'm definitely lagging behind in this department, so I'm going to be taking the next few weeks to think about what we can do, and also speaking to my wife, of course, to get her on board with what we can do and where we can reduce certain things. We've already started with plastic, and we've started by reusing bags and things like that. But I think we can do a lot more. And these answers, and also speaking to Patrick Niedermeyer in that episode, definitely inspired me to do more. So I'm going to be looking at what to do. Yeah. So that is the feedback about those two episodes. Now we get on to the Germany Uncovered course. I've seen part of the material, and I really like the approach. So I decided to get Kerstin on the show to discuss the course itself, what story-based language learning is, and I also asked her a bit about her background, like as a teacher, why she made the course. It's a very interesting little chat. Take a listen, and if you're interested, in the show notes there are two links, one to the sample course and one to the Germany Uncovered course. I do get a commission if you use those links, but as I said, I also really believe in this course. Take a listen to Kerstin talking about the Germany Uncovered language course. So I've mentioned on the podcast a few times the German Uncovered course, and today I have the creator of the course. It's Kerstin from Fluent Language. Hi, Kerstin. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Sean. It's really cool to get a chance to talk about German Uncovered.
Yeah, so the thing about this course is that this is exactly the kind of course that I wish I had had when I was learning German. So I've had a look at some of the course material, and I think for German learners, it's very cool because I don't do very well with structured classroom learning and that kind of thing, where this is more organic way of learning German. So before we get to the German course, maybe you could just explain to me a bit about story-based learning.
The idea of story-based learning is that I guess what this course does really well, and what story-based learning does really well, is two things. Number one is it keeps you interested beyond a little dialogue in a textbook. So normally you might have a little textbook, and I'm a language learner myself, so I know how this goes. It's sort of like, oh yeah, Sally and Sam are going down the road. Let's go to the market. What? How far is it to go to the market? End of dialogue. End of Sally and Sam. We'll never see them again. No, who knows? Yeah. Whereas the way the story incorporates in German Uncovered is we got 20 chapters, solid chapters, and we started with the story. We started with this, this piece of writing that I actually, when I made the course, I was enjoying reading it, and I wanted to know what happens next. And it's fun. It's a journey around Germany, and you kind of follow your characters, so you don't think so much about learning, right? It's more about actually using the language, which is why everybody learns anyway. Yeah. And then as the chapters evolve, as the chapters progress, we sort of get a little bit more complex, a little bit more complicated in the language, but we don't baby our readers. So the other thing about story-based learning, which is why I think it works so well for adult learners, is that it gives you as the learner
a lot of freedom to explore and figure things out before I come in and explain them. We don't come in,
Right.
there's a grammar rule first. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you about the dative case. And now here are 12 examples with the dative case. Are you bored yet? Whereas what this does is, of course, I'm going to teach you about the dative case, but what I get to do as a teacher and what you get to do as a learner is you get to kind of look at it and go, I wonder why this ending changes. Why does this word keep doing this thing? And that question in your mind is such a magical learning thing. It's so good because it makes you much more receptive to the rule, and it gives you a context for how this actually looks in real life German. And the story is what pulls it all together. So it gives me a chance to take an example from something you've already seen, explain something, and then for you to look back at the text and go, oh, okay, yeah, no, I see how this works. And the patterns get so much easier. And I think that's one of the best things for learning German, which is a language that is quite rules-based, that does have its internal logic, and you do have to get your head around it.
Yeah. So the way it works is you read part of the story, you read a chapter, and then you go through the rules of what you've just gone through.
You read the story right from the start, like even from zero, from not knowing any German. We work with a text that has a lot of cognates in. So cognates are words that you will know as an English speaker through in German. So in English and German, they're so similar. A word like region, you'll just look at it and be like, okay, I get this word. So we ask you to read the story, then have a listen to the audiobook, and we don't give you the translation yet until you've done that, until you've tried to make your own sense of it. And it gives you, I think, again, as an adult learner, it gives you so much autonomy. It's really, really great. And for me as a teacher, it was amazing to go 20 chapters, and I kept finding cognates, and I kept finding things about English. So I did a lot of exploring into older English and seeing those similarities. So where in German you've got a D, that's often related to a TH in English. And those, once you see them, that's the magic of a cognate. Once you see it, you can never unsee it, and suddenly you're better at German. It's so cool.
That's amazing. So who is the course for? It's for new starters to German, complete beginners, right?
So if you're a false beginner, this is going to be really perfect for you. So you did a little bit of German some time ago, but you don't really know a context for it, and you feel like you should start again from zero. The great thing with a course like this is, as long as you're reading the text and the text is relatively easy for you, you can just move to the next chapter and you always know where you're at. So it's a fantastic course for people who've done a bit of German, have got the kind of dormant, but they felt like they didn't do it properly in the past, and they really want to take it seriously this time.
And what level are you at when the 20 chapters ends?
I matched as well as I could. So I took this very, very seriously because I know some people might go for exams, etc. I matched it to the end of an A2 levels, early B1, end of A2. But I think you will actually have more exposure to language than just that, and more advanced exposure, because the story goes a little bit further. But my video-based teaching and worksheets and all that stuff, that takes you easily into A2, all the way to, we've had people who finished German Uncovered, started a B1 course, and were ahead of the class.
Yeah. So there's two courses that have to do with German. The one is the German Uncovered course that we're talking about, but there's also something about story-based learning, right? There's a second course.
Yes, it's our little sample. So if somebody doesn't really understand or wants to see how this whole thing works in action, I've made a little course called Experience Story-Based German Learning, which introduces you to my co-creator, Ollie, and me, and takes you through how this story-based method works. So there's a live, pretty much like a recorded live demo in the course, where you get a piece of the story, you get to actually sample it and try working it out for yourself, and you get a real taste for how this method works, because I think the best way to understand how it works and to get yourself ready to learn German with this is to just try it out. And then there's a big sort of preview area where you can actually look around and see how I teach, etc. I think even online and offline, you got to like your teacher. So to me, that's important, and it gives people a chance to get to know me.
Very cool. And speaking of getting to know you, so we've spoken about the course, but I just want to ask you just briefly, what is it? Why do you do this? Why did you make this course? And what's your background?
I am a native German speaker. I moved to England when I was 20. So I've lived in England a good while now. And
I can hear it in the accent too.
Why did I make the course? It's a great way of teaching German. For me personally, it was a great challenge I've never, to say I have developed a full German course and I've written a whole curriculum is a fantastic professional achievement. But for me as a German teacher, it's really, there's something about teaching German that is so cool because you get to invite people into your culture and get to invite people into learning German, not in a... To jump over any stereotypes, to jump over any preconceptions of this language. People tell me German is so hard. People tell me German sounds so harsh. What does that even mean? There's so much anxiety around learning our language, and I living in the UK, I'm also an ambassador of Germany in a way, and I know exactly what people think about Germany because they tell me, and it's a special thing, I think, to be able to try and make it a little bit easier for people and invite people in. And I also believe that my teaching style is different from, say, how they teach at Goethe-Zertifikat, which doesn't mean I don't know my grammar. And I think I think especially knowing the English language so well has helped me become a better German teacher because I know what you're trying to do in English when you're making a mistake in German. And that really helps. It helps you, it helps me. But also it allows me, making something like German Uncovered has allowed me to bring you German in a much more approachable, relaxed way. And I know that I have students, one who wrote me a message on Instagram when she got to the point where I had to, reluctantly, show the table. You might remember this table that shows you all of the adjective endings in all of the cases with all of the genders.
Yes.
And when I'm making the course, the first thing I did was I showed this table and I was like, okay, so here are all the endings. And then I just overlaid a big sign saying, don't panic. Kind of panic, don't panic. Let's have a look at these. Let's look at how similar they all are. Yeah. Look, if you say at the end, you're probably half the time you're right anyway. So to me, I work a lot with mindset with my students. I work a lot, I work as a language coach. So I work a lot on mindset and, dealing with negative self-talk, etc. This way of teaching gives me a chance to not just transfer knowledge, but to encourage people at the same time and remind everybody that we're just having fun here.
So, Kerstin, you're also a podcaster.
Yeah, I love making my podcast.
Yeah. So tell me briefly about what your podcast is.
My podcast is called The Fluent Show. And at the start of every episode, we explain it's about loving, living, and learning languages. So This is not a German learning show. It's not a language course. It's not, your soy means I am or anything like that. It's a show where we talk about what language learning means, how language learning shows up in our lives, and how we change through language learning, interesting stuff. And I've interviewed a few really cool people, like the inventor of the Klingon language, for example.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, Mark Ockrent. That was really fun. And lots of academics, psychologists who study how language learning works, how we get discouraged or encouraged. We talk about the best study methods. We talk about all that kind of stuff.
Wow,
and sometimes about Lou Bega and Adele.
All right. Well, I am not a listener yet, but after hearing all of that, then I am in. Especially when there's Lou Bega in the conversation, then I need to know what you're talking about. Kerstin, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on to talk to me.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week. I feel like we've gone through a lot of stuff today. Next week, I have a polyglot from the United States of America on the show, talking about her approach to learning multiple languages and also the specific quirks about the German language. That's coming up next week. Music on this episode by my band 10 Cent Janes. Additional music by Ryan Anderson until the end. Auf Wiederhören.